Bom dia aos colegas que estão aqui conectados ao nosso workshop em gestão de energia, com foco nas oportunidades no setor de petróleo e gás. Esse é um daqueles eventos que a Abrinstal procura desenvolver ao longo do ano, apresentando os temas de gestão de energia, com suas particularidades em setores industriais específicos. Nosso foco na indústria de óleo e gás é devido a uma oportunidade, que daqui a pouco eu explico, mas também é um dos setores intensos em consumo de energia, é um dos energos intensivos. Então, é um dos setores que tem como vocação produzir energia para a sociedade, mas o setor, ele próprio, é intenso no consumo de energia. A produção de energia não é de graça, você necessita também de energia para produzir energia, né? Então, este é o nosso evento, o nosso primeiro evento do ano de 2022. Nossos realizadores, então, é a Abrinstal, como a nossa instituição mãe do evento, a BNT, o CB 116, que é o Comitê Brasileiro de Gestão de Energia da BNT, e as nossas instituições aqui da Universidade de São Paulo, o Instituto de Energia e Ambiente e o nosso Research Center for Greenhouse Gas Innovation. São os nossos braços acadêmicos que têm nos ajudado a introduzir pesquisadores novos, para trazer os nossos pesquisadores sêniores que trabalham nessa área. É o braço acadêmico que permite trabalhar também a formação de recursos novos para esse tema da gestão de energia. Neste evento, nós temos primeiro, antes de mais nada, esta introdução eu faço em português, mas o evento será todo em inglês, né? Nós temos um público-alvo aí internacional, e os nossos palestrantes são experientes consultores internacionais. Nosso primeiro convidado é o Marco Matteini. O Marco Matteini é o diretor de desenvolvimento industrial do Departamento de Energia da Unido. O Marco é doutor em engenharia elétrica pela Universidade de Bolonha, na Itália, e tem mais de 20 anos aí de experiência no desenvolvimento e implementação de projetos internacionais de pesquisa e cooperação técnica nas áreas de tecnologia de energia renovável e eficiência energética industrial. Desde 2007, ele faz parte da equipe da Unido, que desenvolve o Programa Global da Unido sobre Eficiência Energética Industrial. E desde 2008, representa a Unido no projeto ISO Comitê Técnico 242, que é o Comitê Técnico da ISO voltado à gestão de energia. Hoje ele chama ISO TC 301, Gestão de Energia e Economia da Energia. Então, agradecer aí a presença do Marco. Tem sempre uma agenda muito conturbada, atendendo aí as demandas do mundo inteiro, mas sempre que temos a oportunidade de chamá-lo e trazê-lo para nos trazer suas reflexões, ele sempre nos atende aí com muita alegria. Então, obrigado, Marcos, pela participação. Nosso segundo convidado é muito conhecido aqui no nosso ambiente brasileiro, é o senhor Alberto Fossa, doutor Alberto Fossa, também engenheiro eletricista pela Escola Politécnica da USP, MBA em Conhecimento, Tecnologia e Inovação pela Faculdade de Economia da USP, e é mestre e doutor em Energia aqui pelo nosso Instituto de Energia e Ambiente da USP. É o vice-chair e chefe da delegação brasileira no TC 301 da ISO, que é esse da Gestão e Economia da Energia. E é o diretor executivo da Abrinstal, onde ele implementou, né, dentro da Abrinstal, toda essa visão de gestão e economia da energia. E o nosso terceiro convidado, também com muita experiência internacional, apesar da idade, jovem, é um dos nossos inseridos aí, que veio do mundo acadêmico e hoje já participa dos fóruns e das rodadas internacionais, é o senhor Alexandre de Barros Galo, engenheiro mecânico pela Escola Politécnica da USP e pela Mines Paris Tech. Mestre em energia aqui pelo Instituto de Energia da USP, onde também está terminando o seu doutorado em energia. É pesquisador do Research Center for Greenhouse Gas Innovation e atualmente conduz pesquisas sobre indicadores de desempenho energético e sua relação com a mitigação de emissões de CO2. Então temos aqui 3 palestrantes de altíssimo nível que apresentarão suas reflexões em inglês, mas só para encerrar essa minha introdução, eu vou dar a agenda dessa manhã para nós, né? Então vamos iniciar com a apresentação do Marco. Ele nos falará sobre os avanços alcançados na promoção da gestão da energia, principalmente no setor industrial, pela Unido. Nos trará aqui um pouco de análise comparativa internacional, como esse tema tem sido desenvolvido aí em boas práticas no mundo, né? O Alberto Fossa, ele falará sobre as contribuições para a mitigação das mudanças climáticas a partir da adoção de sistemas de gestão de energia. Apresentará aqui um estudo de caso na cadeia produtiva do gás natural. São pesquisas que nós desenvolvemos aí nos últimos anos no Research Center for Greenhouse Gas Innovation. O Alexandre Barros, ele também falará sobre uma análise dos mecanismos de contabilização de carbono vinculados à gestão da energia, enfatizando que é esse vínculo aí entre contabilização de carbono e medidas de promoção da gestão da energia é um dos temas que eu entendo ainda na fronteira do conhecimento. Apesar de aparentemente parecer óbvio, né? Mas quando a gente começa a fazer as continhas e começa a definir os critérios e começa a definir parâmetros, aí você começa a se deparar com a fronteira do conhecimento. Então, serão 20 minutos para cada um dos apresentadores e no final das apresentações voltaremos aqui com um debate aberto para o público. Agradecer a Renata Mendes, que é a secretária-geral da Abrinstal e que está nos apoiando aí no backstage, dando o apoio para os apresentadores e também fará o follow-up aí das perguntas enviadas pelo público. Pessoal, I'm turning to English. Thank you again, Marco, for your time. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Admilson, and big thanks also to the organizer for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today. Let me share my screen and then I will start with my presentation. Do you see the cover slide? I assume. I will share a bit of information about what UNIDO has been doing in particular to promote energy management system and ISO 50001 worldwide. And I will also discuss a bit about the value of this unique energy efficiency tool and ways that organizations like UNIDO, but also countries have to support the promotion and deployment of energy management system ISO 5001. And I will conclude with some information related to the implementation in the oil and gas sector. Starting with a bit of context to our discussion and also workshop. Important for UNIDO's work is that industry worldwide account for about 40% of the total final energy consumption, and a biggest portion of this energy is fossil fuel, and particular coal. Another important element to remember is that about 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions are coming from industry sector, either as a direct or indirect emissions. And the third point is that the industrial sector remains one of the sectors that are driving economic growth, and projections are showing that until 2030, industry will grow between 10 and 30%, depending on the specific subsector. And most of this growth will happen in developing countries or emerging economies. Another important piece of context related to energy efficiency. Now, in this slide, you can see a graph from the last World Energy Outlook of the International Energy Agency, showing the trajectories of emissions under different policy scenarios. But the key message here is that energy efficient technologies and services are expected to contribute about 40% of the required greenhouse gas emission reductions. But energy efficiency has a critical role to play in making greenhouse gas emission reduction goals achievable, and in particular make them achievable at the lowest cost. A third element of context, more specific to the oil and gas sector. Now, in this slide, there is a figure from a paper published by McKinsey company in January 2020. McKinsey has estimated that the oil and gas industry operation accounts for about 80% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And in addition to this 8% within their operation, there is another 34% of emissions that are happening from the uses downstream of oil and gas. Another important information from this analysis of McKinsey is that with the currently available technologies, it is possible to reduce and address most of the current oil and gas industry emission. And in this diagram, there is a list of possible measures and actions that can be taken at upstream, midstream, and downstream level. And you would see that energy efficiency is appearing several times, and other measures that are listed are really related to the practices of the industry and how certain operations are carried out. So with this context, few words about the value of energy management system and ISO 50001. Now, the main goal remains to reduce the consumption of energy, and in this way, reduce the cost of operation to industry or other organization, as well as the emission of CO2 and other harmful gases. Now, reducing energy consumption and improving energy efficiency, it is not simply a matter of adding the latest technology or piece of hardware, but it depends more on bringing together and managing effectively people, information, and technology across the organization processes, and also business units. Now, energy management system and ISO 50001 are unique in their ability to manage effectively these three elements and go towards energy performance improvement, both in the short term as well as in the long term. In addition to that, the value creation of energy management system ISO 5001 does not stop at the fence of an organization, but it derives also from the context in which the organization operates and from what is happening in this context. For instance, with continually evolving challenges and opportunities coming from the policy and regulatory frameworks that in the last years have been changing more and more because of climate-driven objectives. But there are also changes that are happening in the market and which are offering opportunities or challenges. And these changes are related to what the market is demanding clients and customers to organization, but also on the side of service offers, energy suppliers work. But energy management system in ISO 50001 enable organization to take into consideration all these external factors and the associated risk and opportunities when it comes to decision making and taking actions for improving energy performance. So the value that energy management system ISO 5001 can generate are ensuring to manage complexity and to drive transformation for continual improvement of energy performance, and more also carbon net zero goals. It ensures optimization of existing assets and energy cost and greenhouse gas emission reduction. It helps in de-risking energy investments. There is always a performance aspect associated to investment. And by doing this, it also helps maximizing the returns of these investments. Energy management system 50001 are also allowing organization to demonstrate their leadership on performance excellence, sustainability, and climate change mitigation. It's a very effective tool to integrate energy performance monitoring and improvement in daily operation and decision-making of organization, and in the medium term, also in the corporate culture. And last but not least, very important to highlight is that energy management system sustain commitment and systematic actions in the long term. Maybe some of you have seen these figures that is now shown on the slide, which shows the trajectory of energy cost in a company that decided to implement energy management system. You can see this figure is from 0 to 3 years. But in reality, we have to remember that the energy management system keeps working and keeps driving energy performance improvement in the long term. And this aspect, which is unique within the space of energy efficiency measures, can become even more important and beneficial when we start to factor in also CO2 emission reduction. So moving to ways to promote energy management and ISO 50001. In this slide, you can see what UNIDO consider as the supply value chain for energy management system and ISO 50001. Starting from the left side, we have the policy and regulatory framework, and we have the institutions that are responsible for policy making and policy implementation. We have then the market players, starting with energy management system or energy efficiency consultants. We have the enterprises that have to implement energy management system. We have energy performance verifier. Then we have the conformity assessment part of the chain with the lead auditors, the certification bodies, the accreditation bodies, and then we have the financial and investors. Now, the UNIDO typical technical cooperation project intervention combines activities that are targeted to every stakeholder that is in this supply and value chain. And this holistic approach is very important to really maximize the impact, both in terms of market creation as well as in terms of results. Moving a bit inside some of these parts of the supply value chain, if we talk about policies and legislation, in general, to date, only about 40% of global energy use is covered by mandatory energy efficiency policy and regulation, according to the International Energy Agency. Looking at specifically ISO 50001, there are still a few countries that have decided to take a mandatory approach for 50001 energy management system. However, a recent interesting development is that at the moment within the European Union, in the draft of the new energy efficiency directive, there is an obligation for implementing and getting certified to 50001 for large enterprises. So it's very likely that within the European Union, it will become mandatory. The work that UNIDO is doing at the policy and legislative level include activities that are aimed to integrate energy management system in 50001 in voluntary agreement schemes for energy efficiency, in fiscal or financial incentive that governments are offering to support productivity of industry, as well as environmental objective, green public procurement, and also personal qualification. Energy management system and ISO 50001 is a relatively new type of set of skills that differs from the traditional energy efficiency engineering and technology approach. So creating, developing a capable and competent workforce, it's very important. And which leads me to the next slide. Within the UNIDO program, and we see it, I would say, also within European Union and OECD countries, but it is extremely important to build and strengthen the expertise and the skills of energy efficiency service providers in the market on these technologies, and at the same time build and strengthen the capabilities of industry and their personnel. In this slide, there is an overview of the UNIDO capacity building and implementation program, which brings together experts and energy efficiency service providers with enterprises from industry sector in particular, but also some others, to work together to implement energy management system and combine this on-the-job practice with classroom training and learning. And this approach has provided very good results. Another element in the UNIDO intervention to promote and support the adoption of energy management system in 50001 is financing instrument. Now, energy management system and ISO 50001 are not an expensive energy efficiency measure to implement. It is actually relatively low cost to implement just the system. Then investments are to be made over time as we improve energy performance. But financing instrument can be an effective way to further promote ISO 50001 when the financing instrument is directly and explicitly connected to 50001. Here there is information about a loan guarantee fund that UNIDO has established in Ukraine and which is in operation since a year. And I don't go through the details in case there should be interest, could answer later. Another new element that we have added to the UNIDO strategy is a stronger cooperation with universities as a bridge between government and industry to work in industrial energy efficiency. But also this program is trying to further strengthen the work on developing experts and engineers and other technical professions with a stronger understanding and skills for energy management system. This program has been piloted in Colombia. It's currently in operation. It has generated very good results in terms of upgrading skills of students as well industry personnel. And it is a program that has particularly worked with small and medium enterprises, which are those that usually find more difficult to work on energy efficiency and where capabilities gaps are greater. Now, if we are talking about promotion and advocacy for energy management system and ISO 50001, of course, proper communication and effective dissemination of information and resources is of critical importance. This is why back in 2018 and 19, UNIDO has launched the Industrial Energy Accelerator. This is an initiative that wants to really play the role of platform for networking between different stakeholders on the topic of industrial energy efficiency, and more recently, more and more on decarbonization. But on the accelerator platform, we have placed a set of energy efficiency solution, media kits, and access to resources that can really facilitate the work of energy efficiency service providers or industry people in making the business case for energy management system implementation 50001 and other best practice measures. Now, here you have an overview of the program of UNIDO. Over 10 years, we have implemented projects in 25 countries. In some countries, projects are over. In others, we are starting. And here on the right, there are some numbers in terms of result and impact. We have worked directly with more than 500 companies around the world. For those companies that had good level of commitment, savings over just the first and second year ranged between 4 to 15%, and also with very limited investments. And we have estimated that these companies have saved in total more than $400 million in terms of energy cost. This is the last slide. I'm sorry, I hope I'm doing okay with the time. I have looked a bit on the implementation of energy management system ISO 5001 in oil and gas. In the survey that the International Standardization Organization carries out every year, unfortunately, there are no disaggregated numbers within the mining and quarrying industrial sector. But UNIDO is a partner of the Clean Energy Ministerial Energy Management Leadership Awards. This is a global award that recognizes best practices and excellence in energy management system implementation. And here I have placed the logos and the name of some of the companies from oil and gas sector that have participated in the awards. Now, the majority are still in the downstream part of the industry, but there are some interesting developments also in the midstream and upstream area of the oil and gas industry. And if you go to this link to this website, you will have the possibility to find case studies prepared by these companies on their energy management system and ISO 50001 implementation. And these case studies are designed to support presentation of the business case for energy management system ISO 5001. And there are also a lot of information that can be very helpful in accelerating the learning process for newcomers in implementing the system. Thank you very much. And if there will be questions later, happy to answer. I'll stop sharing.
I'm sure we will have nice questions during the debate session. Thank you very much again for this international perspective. And now let's hear a little bit about the Brazilian reality. So I invited Dr. Alberto Fossa to come to floor with us, and then I give him the floor. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you, Edmilson. Thank you for everybody to attend this meeting, this workshop. I'm happy to have this opportunity to share some recent research. In fact, I let me share first of all. Let me share my screen with you and the presentation. Okay, I am assuming you are looking the presentation. Yeah, as I said, it's a great opportunity to share the floor with Marco. Marcos is a very friend, a very enthusiastic guy, promoting energy management around the world. We met before in the environment of developing ISO 50001 and other standards in ISO. And I will try. It's very hard to show something after Marco presentation. He covered very nice view, the perspective of energy management promotion around the world. But our research is connected with my postdoctorate program. Was try to find the connection between energy management systems and effective reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and mainly trying to find some connections in the gas production chain. Very quickly, the objectives of the research, I will try to present some energy management perspective. Much aspects was covered by Marco. I will try just to reinforce some points, and we can look for opportunities in oil and gas sectors with some conclusion for the future. Our research was established based in two major points. The first point was try to figure out what happened around the world in promoting energy efficiency in several sectors, mainly looking for energy management systems. So you listen a lot from Marco perspective, from UNIDO perspective, but we try to include, of course, UNIDO, because UNIDO is a very important actor in the scenario. But we found some other organizations and initiatives related to promotion of climate change reduction, JG, and connection with energy aspects. This was the first point, and the second point was try to discover the connection between reduce energy and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We found that we have several methodologies to try to make this bridge, to try to make this connection, but unfortunately, we, as I think as Professor Edmilson said before, it's a limit of the knowledge we are discussing in the international community, how we can do this effectively with a deeply understanding. And I think Alexander can cover in more detail these connections related to quantifications and measurement of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. This is Marco present a more new scenario related to this figure, but mainly the important is to reinforce the idea that energy efficiency is one of the most important action the world can provide to reduce or to reduce climate change impacts. We are convinced that energy efficiency needs to have a support to be implemented around several organizations, and including oil and gas sectors, mainly using energy management system as a facilitator of interpretation of energy efficiency opportunities. The importance is to create this connection between energy efficiency and CO2 abatement or CO2 reduction. We believe that it's not so simple and not so obvious, but this is a very, very strong connection between these two aspects. And we believe that the bridge can include energy management and energy performance to connect energy efficiency and CO2 abatement. I would like just to reinforce or to present additional information related to energy management systems. As Marco said during his presentation, we have metrics to analyze the results in one particular organizations or looking for a particular process when we are implementing energy management systems. These metrics we call indicators. In case of ISO 50001, we call energy performance indicators that allow us to compare how better we are promoting the reduction of consumptions for one particular process we are looking at. And based on these indicators, we can establish a correlation of CO2 abatement. This is a challenge that we have in hands in order to establish a very good methodology to establish these connections more clear. And we believe that we are contributing with these discussions, with this kind of research, and we will listen a little more with the details from perspective from Alexander's presentation. We had an opportunity to participate in the first paper published in Energy Policy, touching these aspects, this connection between energy efficiency or energy performance improvement and CO2 abatement. It was a first tentative of establishing some methodology using a very large numbers, using a very large perspectives to connect these two words, efficiency and abatement, CO2 abatement. But we are trying to improve some other, include some other aspects and improve the results with the disconnections. One of perspective of our researcher was try to create some scenario related to normalization or standardization procedures around the world. And UNIDO is all the times presenting this figure in these initiatives. Based on the UNIDO promotion, we established an official technical committee in ISO that now we call TC301. But we have other connections. Here in Brazil, for the Brazilians, we have a mirror committee, the ABNIT CB 116, ABNIT CB 116, that is in charge of follow the activities from TC301. I would like to reinforce some strategical committee in ISO serving the technical manager board and including the environmental management, the C207. All these committees or these connections can be important to understand our possibilities to influence and participate in these discussions and in this debate around the world, looking for natural gas chain. This is a slide talking about UNIDO. I have no more words based on presentation from Marco, the first presentation. Just to say that the UNIDO was very, very important in this process since 2005, maybe, starting the discussions with the international experts in energy, trying to find a solution to promote energy efficiency. And fortunately, we found energy management system as a great tool to promote energy efficiency, as said by Marco before. We had a very large perspective from UNIDO based on presentation from Marco. I have no more words. But we have other initiatives, important initiatives. I am focusing two more. One from United Nations, the Economic Commission for Europe. We have a gas working group in UNICE, talking about the most important climate changes connections in gas sector. Mainly, I am reinforcing two activities from UNICE inside this gas working group, the synergies between gas renewables and energy efficiency. We have a particular job trying to connect energy efficiency opportunity with the gas field, and measuring and management methane emission and gas chain. If you remember one slide from Marco, looking for opportunities in oil and gas industry, looking for upstream, midstream, and downstream, we could find that the most important opportunity is in methane emissions, in fugitive methane emissions and gas chain. So this is one particular topic we are discussing in UNICE, trying to find solutions and mitigation actions to reduce emissions from methane. But our research put more focus in the methodology related to energy uses or energy itself. So we forget a little the methane emissions, because the methane emissions are fugitive. Methane emissions are not directly connected with energy, and we put our focus in energy aspects. I can present a little further. Other important initiative is from OGCI, Oil and Gas Climate Initiative. It's organizations based on the most important companies of oil and gas sectors around the world. And this is the three topic they are putting as a priority, but reducing carbon dioxide is one priority of the group. And we are trying, or in fact, we are looking for actions from OGCI to connect reducing carbon dioxide or CO2 reduction with energy efficient promotion. TC301, I think, is the basic environmental to discuss 50,001 or energy management systems. I would like just to remember that we are producing more standards. In fact, we have more than 16 standards published now, supporting the ideas and the concepts related to 50,001 energy management system. I would like just to reinforce one particular standard that called ISO 50006 that talks about indicators and baselines. This is a fundamental standard to be possible understand the metrics that you can use and the indicators you can establish when you are implementing energy management system in one particular organizations, in order to allow us to connect with CO2 reduction. As I said before, CB 116 is our representative, local representative of this movement, and everybody can participate in this movement here in Brazil. Another particular important initiative is based on ISO. This is a climate change coordination committee is in charge to promote the climate change in standards. I would like to share one important activity we have the opportunity to participate in, create a guidelines to address climate change in standards. This is the guide 84, ISO guide 84, discussing the opportunities we have in standards when you are talking about climate change. So this is include again energy efficiency, and our participation was important during this process or during this project because we could have an opportunity to include energy efficiency in the guidance to climate change aspects in the standards. So now we can find this clear connection between energy efficiency promotion, energy management promotion, and climate change in all kind of different standards. Finally, we have a very important technical committee, the Technical Committee 207. This is the Environmental Management Committee, responsible for the most important technology or methodology to quantify GHG emissions or CO2 emissions. This is the series ISO 14064. This is maybe the most important methodology trying to harmonize the several different perspectives or aspects from quantification that we can find in several other initiatives. One point that we tried to analyze in deeply way was the methodology to quantify CO2, the abatement or CO2 reductions connected with energy management promotion or energy efficiency promotion. And we could find different methodologies, different approaches. All the things happen at the first time from IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They promote or establish the first methodology to calculate or to quantify emissions. But now we have other initiatives trying to define more clear aspects in this kind of calculations. So we try to figure out what happened based on this particular methodologies and connected directly with the gas opportunity sector, mainly looking for upstream production scenario during the research. I will not cover this particular quantification and quantification aspect because I think Alexander will cover in more detail, but it was presented in our research. The final initiative is from Carbon Trust together with UNIDO. We have important goals trying to establish double of rate of energy efficiency in the general industrial sector by 2030, accelerating the initiative, technologic, and improving the regulatory frameworks to accelerate and to share the information related to energy efficiency and programs like energy management systems implementation, and something like UNIDO is promoting around the world. This is a challenge. I am, just to put in the table, this is a challenge to try to establish a very large program here in Brazil with UNIDO participation, like UNIDO has in Colombia, for example, in Latin America. But I think we needed to work together to try to invite in the government representatives and other interested parties in the country to promote some initiative like UNIDO has in other countries, because it's just, I can't believe that we can made these things together with UNIDO here in Brazil. So this is one opportunity we are having here to mobilize the people and the other parts to promote this kind of initiative. So this is the portfolio we have. In a little more greater scenario, looking for connection between energy efficiency and energy management systems, and some connections with the methodology to quantify CO2 abatement or greenhouse gas abatement. As I said, we put our focus in oil and gas sector, trying to discover when we could get some results in one particular process, looking for oil and gas chain. Marco presents some numbers from the oil and gas sectors. I am putting some other. We have a lot of billion tons of CO2 emissions related to operations from oil and gas sector. So this is a very, very large sector around the world, and very, very important, and creating a great impact in climate change. So this is the reason we are looking in deeply way to these opportunities, because we believe that we have a lot of things that we can improve in upstream, midstream, and downstream. Our focus was in upstream, in the production part, trying to discover and compare some methodologies to analyze quantification of CO2 and look for opportunity in the process. When we are looking for the chain of gas sector, we normally look for direct emissions and the indirect emissions. There is a lot of barriers when we are talking about quantify this emission inventory, mainly focusing the emission factor identifications. We needed to find an emission factor based on each kind of process we are looking. And for our perspective, these emission factors are very, very generic, and we needed to work a little more and specify more appropriate factor to quantify in more appropriate way the correct emissions looking for one particular process. We put our focus in direct emissions, looking for the power generation aspects in one platform. The platform selected for our research was the FPSU, the floating production storage and offloading. This is the most important kind of platform we are using here in Brazil, looking for deep water production, extraction of oil and gas. And looking for this opportunity, we try to find energy opportunity, fugitive emissions, but putting our focus more in energy aspects, trying to discover improvements of energy efficiency and try to connect these improvements of energy efficiency with the CO2 reduction. We analyze the structure of the product in one platform like the FPSO, selecting some particular examples that we could find in bibliography, and one examples or cases that we could find to promote efficiency in power generation in this kind of platform. Based on this improvement, we could establish some kind of indicators, and based on these indicators, we could establish a connection to CO2 abatement or CO2 reduction. I am sure Alexi, we will present in more details these aspects of the methodology, but basic the project we are developing detail this kind of methodology for one particular process. We believe that we can extend this experience or this small case for other parts of the production in upstream sector, and certainly we can export this experience to midstream or downstream and other kind of process. This is the first step to show that this is possible to reduce some part of energy in one particular activity of the oil and gas chain, and we can connect this reduction with CO2 or GHG reduction. We're looking for climate change mitigation. I think just a few words. This is my two final slides. This is two messages from Shell representing the oil and gas sector. They are very, very interested in improve energy efficiency, mainly reducing GHG emissions with some numbers and goals for next years. I think, or we hope, our research could contribute with a new vision, connecting energy management systems and reducing energy in production or in middle term or in final uses of gas, or to promote reductions of CO2 emissions in the global scenario. This is the final slide. This is the very good results we could establish during the research. A view that we needed to make a strategic framework control to follow these methodologies around the world, looking for opportunities in several different technical committees in ISO environmental, and providing new knowledge. I would like to remember one of the last slides from Marco, talking that the people and the advocacy includes to develop the communication and the dissemination of this kind of context for the people, to allow the people to decide some things related to the technology or the process operations or related things. So we established this framework, and now we are starting a new project looking for this strategic framework control in order to serve the community, mainly the Research Center for Greenhouse Gas Center, with the knowledge related to initiatives around the world from connected with climate change and this kind of accountabilization and promotion of energy efficiency. I think that's it. Thank you so much. Sorry if I pass a little my time. It's so much aspects to cover. Looking for a research of almost 4 years, a little more than 4 years. So I am happy to answer some questions if you have something. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. Before we go ahead with our researcher Alex Gallo, for the audience, you can send questions in Portuguese. Vocês podem mandar perguntas em português através do chat. Então, acho que não precisem se inibir aí com o inglês. Podem mandar em português que nós damos um jeito de preparar a pergunta em inglês para os nossos convidados. Então, passo a palavra. I invite Alexandre Gallo then to come to the floor, and I give the floor to you, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmilson. I'll share my presentation now. Let's see. I assume that you are seeing my presentation now. I would like to start thanking the audience that is following our event today, and also the organization of the event for the invitation to be here discussing with you today an analysis of carbon accounting mechanism linked to energy management. This subject is closely related to my PhD that I'm currently developing at the University of São Paulo, and my presentation will cover the following agenda. I will present some aspects of GHG accounting, and then how we can make this bridge to the concepts of energy management and energy performance. And then I will present a case study showing how we can do these calculations. And it's nice to be the last one to be presenting today, because we have already some brilliant presentations from the other speakers that they have already covered some points that will help throughout my presentation. So when we talk about GHG accounting methods, there are some key features that can be categorized using a standard project management tool like 5W1H. And one of the first feature of an accounting method is to know who is doing the accounting, or whose emissions are being accounted. It can be an organization, it could be an entity, an NGO, it can be a country, a region, and each one of them will have different needs for these accountings. And then analyze the accounting purpose. If the accounting is have a purpose to allocate emissions that are occurring, if the accounting is the accounting of changing emissions due to a project that is being implemented, or if we are building inventories. I just have seen a message. Are you seeing my presentation in the presentations format? I'm not sure that if you.
No.
No.
But we can follow.
But I will stop and start share again. Maybe if I share the screen, I will not have this problem again. Screen, first screen. And maybe now are you having the screen presentation mode?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was talking about the accounting purpose. So we have different purpose for the accounting of the GHG emissions. We can have the emissions accounting for a change that is being occurring due to a project that is being implemented, or we can doing this accounting for an inventory. And this also leads to another question, is the type of change. So if we are accounting changes in emissions between different periods, or if we are accounting for the change before and after an action that is being implemented. Then we have some questions about the boundaries. We can have some physical boundaries that defines where we will be accounting the changes of these emissions, or we can have some sources and sinks of emissions that will be selected because they are affected by a decision or a policy or an intervention. Then we have some aspects related to how these emissions are analyzed. If we are analyzing retrospectively, if we are analyzing the emissions that have already occurred in the past, or if we are trying to analyze future emissions and how these future emissions might change due to a decision that can be made. And finally, the output information, if the output is a physically measurable emission, or if it's a change in emission that might occur or not following a decision or a project. And these emissions should be compared to a counterfactual baseline. And these two emissions are not necessarily physically measurable because they are intended emissions within a context of our project, for example. And why it's important to understand these key features, because they help us to categorize two main types of methods: the attributional methods that are very well known to build inventories, and the consequential methods that are mainly used to evaluate the change in emissions caused by a policy implementation or a project implementation or an intervention. When we talk about the general estimation, generally speaking, we can calculate these emissions by multiplying an emission factor and an activity factor and summing these values inside the boundary. Even though this might seem simple, we have several challenges when defining the boundaries, when defining these emission factors and activity factors, that we might not have specific data for one particular scenario, and we might need to use more default values, and this might add in precision in our calculations, and this leads to a question of transparency and coherence. We need to have to record and document all these definitions and to communicate adequately these informations when we are reporting emissions, and when we are selecting the emission factors, activity factors, and defining the boundaries, they should be coherent with each other. And when we talk about energy-related emissions, in general, the activity factor is either an amount of energy consumption or a change in energy consumption. That is when we make this bridge to the energy management and energy performance aspects. I'll not go deep again in the subject of energy management, but the main idea here is to stress that an energy management system helps organizations to continuously improve their energy performance over the time. And this energy performance is a concept based in three main aspects: a quantitative aspect of energy consumption, a qualitative aspect of energy use, and a technological aspect of energy efficiency. And in order to track the energy performance, the organizations should develop indicators and to analyze over time how these indicators are performing. And if we are really seeing an improvement in energy performance, we need to compare these indicators to their corresponding energy baselines. And even though it might seem simple, we have several challenges in developing energy performance indicators. As Alberto have mentioned, we have the ISO 50006, that is a standard related to energy performance indicators and energy baselines. It's a very hot topic being discussed in ISO, because we have several challenges to express appropriately the indicators and also defining a suitable calculation method. And we need to understand that one question does not imply in constraint to the other one. We need to have a suitable calculation method given the data that we have available, and we need to express our indicator appropriately to pass the right message that we want to express. And these points leads to the question of transparency and also coherence, because these assumptions should be coherent with each other. And when we are developing and making some assumptions, we need also to always record and document all this process to communicate transparently our results. And why this is so important? Because when we are able to proceed an energy performance evaluation using an energy performance indicator, we can assess the energy performance improvement in terms of energy savings. And these energy savings can be then used to estimate greenhouse gas emission mitigations inside the GHG emission accounting. So the main idea here is to present to you a case study following these points that have been presented so far. And the case that involves an FPSO that is very representative of the offshore oil and gas production here in Brazil. This particular FPSO started production in 2003, and in 2006, there were several energy efficiency measures that were implemented in the FPSO. And the idea here is to calculate how these energy efficiency measures have impacted the emissions of the FPSO. The evaluation methodology following the main steps that I've been presenting. So the first one is to define the boundaries and scopes. The second one is to calculate a specific emission factor. The third step is to calculate an adequate activity factor from energy performance evaluation. And the fourth step is to calculate the emission mitigation from the energy performance change. From all the emissions, Alberto has presented some visions of the types of emissions, and also Marco has already presented a chart from McKinsey that shows different types of emissions that we have in the oil and gas production. Here I'm talking on the operation of an FPSO, and in this FPSO I'm only looking at the direct emissions, particularly combustion emissions, and more specifically stationary combustion, because the energy efficiency measures are intended to reduce the energy demand of the FPSO, so we reduce the power generation needs. And the second step, to calculate the specific emission factor, we take a look at the GHG inventory data of the FPSO, and with the information in this inventory, it was possible to calculate an emission factor specific for this FPSO that is related to the oil gas that is in the reservoir. That is a very particular one, and it differs from reservoir to reservoir. And we can see here that the emission factor is approximately 7% higher than a default emission factor from the IPCC guidelines. So it's important always, when possible, to build a specific emission factor when doing the calculations of GHG emissions. And to the step number 3, the first movement inside the energy performance evaluation is to analyze the available data. We have only available data for the gas consumption and the production in this FPSO. So the energy performance indicator here will express the absolute consumption, the gas consumption of the FPSO, and it will be calculated, this indicator, by a linear regression using the only relevant variable that we have here, that is the production. After this calculation, we can build the baseline. The energy baseline is the blue dotted line. And we have 2 years of reporting period after the implementation of the energy efficiency measures, that are the 2 green dots in the screen. And to assess the change in energy performance, we need to compare the normalized baseline, so the blue dotted line, to the current ENPI values, that is the two green dots, and we calculate the difference between these two values for the respective years of 2007, 2008, and we found that we have some reduction in the consumption of the energy in this FPSO compared to the normalized baseline. So the expected consumption, as we might say that. And the idea here is if we are consuming less energy that we were expecting, we are improving the performance of the FPSO. And this last element, the change in energy performance, is used in the next step, when we calculate the emissions that in this case are mitigated by the energy efficiency measures, that can be calculated by multiplying this change in energy performance with the emission factor that was calculated in this step number 2. And I will present here the results using a waterfall chart. So we can see how the change from the baseline emission to the observed emission, how we can decompose the effects of this change from the energy performance change and the production change, because from 2006 to 2008, the production of this FPSO in this particular case has reduced. So if we see the first results for 2007, we can see that almost 1/3 of the reduction of the emissions can be associated to an energy performance improvement effect. And if we take a look at the year of 2008, we can see that roughly 2/3 of the reduction in GHG emissions are due to the change in energy performance. So we can see the effects of these different parameters. The change in energy performance due to the energy efficiency measures that were implemented, and the change in production, because the change in production will also have an impact in reducing energy demand, and this reduced energy demand will decrease the emissions. And this case study in particular has some limitation, particularly related to the data available. Maybe if we had some data on other variables, we could have an indicator with multiple variables. But the main message here is that an NPI, an energy performance indicator, can be used as an activity factor for GHG emission accounting, and this aligns to consequential methods, as I presented at the beginning, that the methods that are used to account the change in emission caused by a decision or an intervention or a project. And this also supports attributional methods in the last refinement of IPCC guidelines in 2019. And they are stressing that when we have facility reported data, these data should be used to increase the quality of the reporting national inventories. And finally, this leads to more transparency in reporting energy emissions, and also be more coherent when expressing these emissions, particularly when we are talking about the emissions related to the organization actions. When we are able to decompose the factors that are making impacts in greenhouse gas emissions, we can more transparently communicate these changes. And all these aspects helps to bring together energy management and carbon management. I thank you all for your attention. I will be happy to hear your questions and discuss with the other speakers. Thank you.
Alex, and so we finish here our first part, our first session with the presentations of our speakers, and now we open for our second part, that is the debate open for the audience. So keep sending question through the chat. But I already have some questions, few questions for each of you guys. Yes, please, I'm re-inviting all of you to the floor again. Marco, please, I have two questions for you. One for Albert so far, one for Alex. So I will give you all the questions, and feel free if you want to send answers for the other questions as well. And so for Marco, the first question is how do you see energy management systems helping to promote behavior changes in the industry sector, and how effective is those behavior changes to reduce energy consumption in the industry? I will aggregate already the second question. If you believe it makes sense to for example, to taking Alex's presentation to focus the discussion in one particular piece of the supply chain, like the FPSO, that's the case presented. I mean, one could eventually say, this is just a ship. It's not the. But on the other hand, one ship like that is a big industry, it's a big factory. So if you need is use it to deal with this small scale focus when we treat the energy management systems. For Alberto, we have a question from Antonio Carlos José de Souza, and he would like you to address how come South America still seems to be behind in energy management systems. From Marco and your presentation, seems that South America is still behind in those initiatives. So what could be, if you agree with this perception, and what could we do to speed up those processes in South America? And for Alexandre Gallo, taking back the question of behavior change, looking at the FPSO environment, we tend to believe that those people operating a ship like that are very conservative. The last things they want is to stop the ship and stop production. That is very costly. And on the other hand, the operator of a ship like that tend to believe that the energy cost for them is zero, because gas is free available, at least for few initial years of the production. So how to promote behavior changes if people eventually has this perception of the world? So I give you back the floor. Maybe Marco can start, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Edmilson, and also many thanks for the questions. Now, regarding how and if energy management system is helping behavioral change, and how effective it is on reducing consumption, if I noted down correctly. On the first part, related to behavioral change, I would say that today, energy management system as of 2001 is probably the energy efficiency tool that is more effective in driving this behavioral change. I mentioned in my presentation that one of the biggest value addition and also unique features of energy management system is connecting technology, people, and information within the context of the organizational processes and different business units. What we have seen over the last 10 years and what was already saw before by countries that put forward the proposal of ISO 50001 was that the traditional project approach to energy efficiency did not have lasting results. The moment people were involved in the project left for one reason or another, the performance of the project or solutions were deteriorating. We have also seen within our projects and other practitioners substantial savings achieved without any investments. We have some case studies in UNIDO where thermal power plants saved 3% of their energy consumption in 1 year just through operational control optimization. We have iron and steel companies like ArcelorMittal or Magnitogorsk from Russia. These are companies with a production capacity between 1.1 to 11 million tons per year, but saving something like 2-3% again of their annual energy consumption through just optimization of their operation across all business units, and by bringing together not just one person or 5 persons to work and care about energy consumption, but people from all the units. So definitely energy management system give structures to programs to drive behavioral change, which starts from the organizational processes, but over time can also lead to individual employees changing their attitude towards energy conservation and energy efficiency. And there are some very interesting experience of big companies. These are big companies that have developed even in-house smartphone applications for suggesting performance improvements and also providing feedback. Something very important when we talk about behavioral change, especially at also a personal level, is the provision of feedback. I'm doing something different. What is the result of that? And for this, the topic that Alex showed on the performance indicator becomes critical because certain indicators are not good in capturing certain type of actions within the organization. Regarding the second question, whether the natural gas ship platform could be also part of UNIDO programs or benefit, I would say absolutely it can benefit from energy management system, and it could be also part of a UNIDO program and projects. At the moment, UNIDO policies are excluding only tobacco industry. So basically, from UNIDO side, we have limitation in working directly with the tobacco industry, unless there are some restriction from our donors. We work with oil and gas. We worked with power plants. We work with mines, coal mines, for instance, combined heat and power plants, refineries. I mean, the all downstream energy intensive sector, we work plenty. And I would tend to see energy users like the natural gas ship as a natural target for energy management system and also UNIDO's program, because a very big energy consumer. So even slightly smaller share of improvement could lead to substantial energy and CO2 savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Roberto?
Yeah, well, first of all, regarding the situation in Latin America related to energy management developing, I completely agree. We are not in a good position. I think the first analysis we can make is comparing with the countries that is improving a lot. For example, Germany is the best when we are looking for energy management implementation in the organization. And when you are asked why, the answer is because the government has regulations and pushing the organizations to adopt the energy management systems and improvement, including reduction in taxes and other mechanisms to improve the implementation. Germany is known in the general scenarios of a world as a great country promoting renewables and climate change mitigation actions and energy efficiency in several ways, different ways, and mainly including energy management promotion. So, first of all, I think it's necessary to have a very strong engagement from the government in promoting or pushing the society and the organizations in some directions. We are trying, as I said before, we are looking or we are working together with the international community since 2007. And we have a structure here in Brazil to promote the energy management system based on standardization perspective in CB 116, together with this TC 301. Yesterday, we had a plenary meeting from our committee with a great participation, more than 20 people, I think, discussing with several different areas, including gas sector, industrial sector, aluminium, some people from services, sanitation aspect companies, and other sectors. But my feeling is we needed two more engagement of the community, mainly looking for the several sectors of the industry on other sectors. For example, we have no one discussing in Brazil and the side of transportation. Transportation is a big sector. We can see a great great challenges or opportunities in transport sector, but we have no representative in our discussion. We have a strong people and a strong job related to building sector. This is a fine. Some people in the industry, but I think we needed to promote a little more the programs. This is very, very necessary to have programs like you, Marco said, based on UNIDO perspective. We need to involve the people, teach the people, get the compromise from sectors to see the results, to believe in the results, and believe that this kind of tools works very well and have a great benefits. We are trying to share examples in different directions. This kind of initiative, like this workshop, is one example to promote the topic with the society. But I think we needed to push a little more. I miss the government sector a little more involved in to push or to establish regulations and things like that. And if you allowed me, Edmilson, I would like to maybe to pass the ball to Marco about his perspective or his thoughts related to regulations, how regulations could push the implementation of energy management systems, maybe after Alex or anyway. I think that's it. Edmilson, I can see you.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you take that immediately, Marco? Then I give the floor to Alex after.
Sure. Thank you, Alberto. Now, Alberto has already highlighted the need of policy. So, and he explained basically why Germany has the highest number of certified companies to ISO 50001. Basically, Germany decided when they transposed the EU Energy Efficiency Directive to offer a fiscal incentive, so tax rebate, to all companies that would implement energy management system ISO 50001. So now that was an incentive type of approach. I would say that in general, we should try to pursue this approach. So if we can design policy instruments that are not a pure obligation, I would say evidence shows that the results are better in terms of impact. One problem that we see in the countries where UNIDO is working is that the moment the government introduce an obligation for something, industry is not really paying much attention to what the obligation is about. They are just focusing in complying with the regulation. So they just focus in crossing the requirement at the minimum cost. So now this risk can be mitigated if the obligation comes as a part of a larger package of measures. Because if there would be some training, if there would be also strong monitoring system, some of the risk associated with pure regulation on some type of instruments like energy management system could be mitigated. In the EU experience, I would say what has worked very well in terms of results have been voluntary agreements between government and industry, where there is still a contractual arrangement, but there is still an obligation, but this obligation is the result of a negotiation between government and industry. So the industries have still the decision making. So I want to be part of this, yes or no. If I am part of this, then I have obligations. But in those cases, there is also a very clear description of the value proposition. So what the industry is going to get from the government and what the government is expecting industry to contribute. But so I think that it's always challenging to design the most cost-effective policy solution in general, but also in the case of energy efficiency, looking at yes, experience, I would tend still to try first an incentive approach with a good structure, good monitoring, and then see the results. But as I mentioned also in my presentation, the EU is now considering to make ISO 5001 mandatory, but the EU had before about 10 years of voluntary incentive for ISO 50001. So there has been, I think, a learning curve, and they have now also information about cost and benefits. They contacted also UNIDO about that. But there is, let's say, also a mature market. So we always have also to put the policy or the regulation in the context. So because yes, a regulation in Germany is not like a regulation in developing countries or emerging economies because of market maturity. I stop here. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Alex, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No problem. And regarding the question about behavioral changes in more technical environments that might be difficult to promote these behavioral changes, but we need to see the whole structure. As Marco mentioned, the ISO 50001 has a structure that helps to effectively improve and promote these behavioral changes. And it starts with the top management commitment. And it's not only a commitment to push downwards in the organization the behavioral change. It's a commitment for the top management to understand the importance of managing energy effectively in the organization, and to build inside the management and operational aspects of the organization measures that the people that are working, they have tools in their operational environment that reflects the energy management and the energy aspects of the operation. And in the particular case of, for example, the FPSO, we should have an environment that has a particular developed indicators for different levels in the structure of the operation, that we have specific indicators that reflect the operation, the daily operation for the people that are working the platform. But these indicators can be aggregated into one more general indicator that will be used by the top management. So everybody is working within an arrangement inside the energy management system. And this over time helps to improve and change the behavior inside the operation.
Thank you. Well, we are getting to our end, but before that, I think we still have 2 or 3 more questions here, so let's take them. I have one question from Carlos Aparecido Ferreira to Alexandre Gallo. If you see any specific difficult or challenge in deploying energy efficient projects or systems in the Brazilian offshore reality. He say in the Brazilian reality, but probably he's mentioning the Brazilian offshore reality. Brazil is a big player in the offshore industry. So if you see any particular difficult in this Brazilian environment. And we have one question here for Marco. And this is for myself, Marco. So sorry. When we read, let's say, the past literature, oil, especially for oil and gas, efficiency was pretty much related to consuming countries. Consuming countries were always thinking about efficiencies, and oil-producing countries were always criticized of having very few attention for efficiency in their process, in the use of their energy, etc. So now, do you see any of those oil-producing countries increasing their attention with efficiency, even eventually promoting those efficiencies in their NDC in the Paris Agreement? I believe if there are countries that would put those in their NDC, it would be those oil-producing countries. And for Alberto, would be an extension of that question. We don't see efficiency, energy efficiency, or good energy management in the Brazilian NDC clearly expressed. So how could we convince the Brazilian government that this is an opportunity, and we do have the institutions like Procel, like Compete, that could be instrumental for Brazil to include in a way more visible the energy efficiency and energy management in the Brazilian NDC. So with that, I finish with the proposals of questions. So keep your time to answer, and then to go straight to your final thoughts. Thank you. Marco, start, or Albert? Alex, your turn to start, please.
Okay. So regarding the challenges to deploying energy efficiency projects, and in this context of oil and gas industry and offshore oil production, as you have mentioned, Edmilson, sometimes we deal with the problem that sometimes the energy is a very small amount in the costs of the production, and sometimes it seems to be a free energy when we have the first production in an oil field. And so sometimes it's a challenge to awaken the importance of energy efficiency. But now that we are seeing, at least almost all the companies are focusing on trying to reduce their carbon footprints in their production as well as in their products. If we pass this message that we can use the tools of energy, improving energy efficiency as a leverage to reduce energy-related emissions, this might help to overcome these challenges and help to promote energy efficiency and further reduce energy-related emissions.
Okay, thank you. I agree with that. Alberto, do you wanna go? No. Let's hear Marco first.
Marco first,
because then I give you the floor for in the workshop as well.
Yes. Thank you, Emerson. So regarding the question on how, let's say, easy or how effective is promotion of energy efficiency in countries that are oil producers or natural gas producers. It remains certainly more challenging. Usually these countries have significantly lower energy prices. Now, in connection to this, there is a big problem anyway in industry mindset and general mindset of organization towards energy efficiency. But 99% of organizations that you need to talk to, they believe that doing energy efficiency means to make investments, capital investments. At that moment, if the energy price is low, the investment most of the time is not attractive. But we have seen anyway, in the Clean Energy Ministerial Energy Management Leadership Award, if you would browse the case study, there are a lot of submissions from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. But for instance, in the Gulf region, energy efficiency seems to making a breakthrough. I think the governments there are also encouraging and offering incentives. As you know, and actually that project was with me. We worked in Russia, and there was also a change of attitude. I think that even though they have plenty of energy resources, anyway, the flexibility towards wasteful use has been reduced. So we have found responsive organizations also in the energy intensive sector that had very small, maybe the energy price was low. Maybe the total share of cost was still significant, but the attitude, I think, is changing, and it's changing also in connection to the climate issue, because now wasting energy or not being energy efficient means higher carbon footprint, which for large companies that are then trading with the European Union or let's say worldwide, is becoming a bit of an issue, and also a business risk.
Okay, thank you, Marco. So, Alberto, please.
Now, regarding the NDCs or the Paris Agreement, I think in case of Brazil, in fact, we have a directly connection with the energy efficiency. We have an NDC. I'm not sure the number, but I think it is 10% reduction of energy consumptions based on energy efficiency aspects, comparing the level of 2011, 2030, I think. I am not sure about the numbers and the period, but we have a NDC calling energy efficiency or connecting energy efficiency in energy reduction. So we have a goal. We have a metric, but we needed to promote the connection between energy efficiency improvement and energy management implementation in the organization and in the society. I think we have a problem here. It's not so clear the numbers or the aspects of NEDCs. The people call about NEDCs in the general aspects, looking for the major reduction numbers of CO2 emissions. And in case of Brazil, the connections is more clear when we are talking about the forests and in agriculture or something like that. But we have a connection with energy efficiency. We also have this connection. So I think we needed to share this information a little more with the society, but certainly we needed to make the connection between energy efficiency goals and energy management improvements. And it's not so clear. We are not promoting energy management, as Mark said, as a good tool to promote or to improve energy efficiency in the organization. So I think this is the gap you have.
Okay. Well, I will take 1 minute just to say thank you for the speakers again. Thank you for the time, for the deep thoughts on the issues that we discussed here. Thank you for the audience, for the questions. And I believe we took big profit for this morning and afternoon. In the case of Marco, is already afternoon, but it was very, very thoughtful here. And I will give the floor to Alberto just to wrap up the session as the promoter, as the director of Abrinstal. So thank you for everybody. And thank you, Renata, and for the backstage, for Marcelo there in the backstage.
Yeah.
Go, Alberto.
Thank you.
As the promoter now.
Thank you all. First of all, the backstage. Thanks, Renata and Marcelo. It allowed us to have this facilitation of the process. Thank you so much, Edmilson, for conducting and organizing the workshop and to share the questions and the structure of the thing. All the times We love your talks and directions. So thank you to join with us, because this is very, very important to have these connections with academy and universities. It is a part of the process to learn and to teach things. Thank you so much, Marco, for your time again. I have several other questions, but I send you to email, mainly talking about the standardization process and the opportunities related to connection of indicators and calculations of the GAG emissions and other related things. But certainly we can share this other things by email. Thanks, Alex. It's a great contribution. It's an amazing guy, very, very focused in this particular topic that I consider very, very important. And thank you, the audience. I hope we could present a little more knowledge, a piece of knowledge, and new knowledge to contribute to the day by day in energy sector, and mainly look in this perspectives and the opportunities in oil and gas chain in sector. Thank you all for thinking, and have a very nice day and great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye
Thank
Bye
bye.
to
you.
everyone.
Okay.